welcome to the Lady Yum Yum Show. Today is a real special Thanksgiving episode, and we've got together with a bunch of other YouTube channels to bring you a virtual Thanksgiving dinner. And like with a lot of Thanksgiving dinners, I was asked to bring something, and specifically, I was asked to bring the vegan entree. So I'm doing one I've done for years, actually. I do it a little different every year, but it's special and it's festive. I call it a holiday Veggie Wellington. Wellington is yummy stuff inside puff pastry. And believe it or not, puff pastry is often vegan. Read the directions. Pepperidge Farm brand is vegan. Not to say all vegan stuff is healthy, because this is a little fatty, but it's delicious. So let's get started. You'll see in these packages that it usually comes as 2 sheets of puff pastry. We're going to use both sheets. These are still frozen. We're going to put them on the parchment paper for about 5 minutes, and then we'll unfold them. You'll see they're in a tri-fold. And then we're going to roll them together. To prepare the mushrooms, I have 6 kind of small portobellos. If you get the big ones, 2 should be enough. And all I'm going to do is a quick slice, just sliced portobellos. I'm slicing these about 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick. I'm going to turn the heat on about medium high. And I'll add some olive oil, enough to cover the bottom of the pan pretty well. So I'd say that's about a tablespoon, a little over a tablespoon that was. And we'll let that get warm. We'll add all the mushrooms. It should cover the bottom of the pan. And then I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of salt on them. That'll draw some of the moisture out. One of the tricks to this Wellington is all our ingredients shouldn't have a lot of water content. They shouldn't be dry, but they should be on the dry side. After about 5 minutes, check your puff pastry and see if you can unfold it without it breaking. You'll see it's a tri-fold. So we're just gonna unfold that. Oh, it's right on the edge. You don't wanna tear it or break it. By breaking, I mean you don't want it to break right there. Now we'll let this thaw for another 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll just lightly roll it to thin it out just a little bit. You can see they've shrunk quite a bit. Now I'm just going to flip them over so the other side gets nice and caramely brown also. And I'm not perfect about this. I try to get them all flipped over. If I miss a couple, that's okay too. Now I like to finish my mushrooms with a little bit of red wine. If you don't drink wine, you can skip this step. That was not even 1/8 of a cup, a couple tablespoons. And we'll just let that cook until the wine soaks into these mushrooms. So the pan will be dry again. And when it is, they are done. Earlier, I cut some day-old bread into cubes for the stuffing. I put them in the oven at 140 degrees until they dried out. I made some vegetable stock. You can look at an earlier episode for that recipe, or just use store-bought. A leek is kind of like an onion, and to prepare it, we take this end off, and you only use the white part. So I'm going to cut up here where it starts getting green. And then you cut it in half. And we're going to rinse it under the faucet to make sure we get any dirt that is in these folds out. And then we'll slice it. If you can't get leeks, or you might not like them, if you don't, you could use onions for everything I'm showing right now. The leeks are just, like I said, a little more mild flavor. I have a nonstick frying pan on a medium-high heat. I'm going to add some oil, a little over a tablespoon again, and the leeks. And caramelizing onions or leeks is just leaving them at a sauté long enough so the natural sugars come out of the vegetable and start to turn brown and sweet and caramely. I'm going to add a little bit of salt to that. If we season everything as we go along, when we get to the Wellington, it'll all taste wonderful when it combines in there. You can see they have a nice brown color on them now. And you want to try one, steal one, and make sure it has a pleasant sweet flavor. You can add sugar. These don't need it. But if you like a little sweetness to it, you can add a little sugar and then just stir it around until the sugar dissolves and caramelizes a bit with your leeks, and you're done. I'm using fresh sage. I'm just going to pinch the leaves off their stems, and I'm going to mince about a tablespoon of fresh sage. If you want to use dry sage, dried ground sage, you'd use about 2 teaspoons of the dry. I'm sautéing 1.5 cups each of onion and celery in some olive oil. When the onions are clear, we'll add about 1 cup of sausage. I'm using an apple sage sausage from Field Roast. And since it's already cooked, you just have to warm it up and get some color on it. Now we'll add our celery, onion, sausage mixture to our bread cubes or stuffing, along with our tablespoon of sage and our 2 teaspoons of thyme, dried thyme, and some salt and pepper. I know it'll need a little more salt. I might even have to add more later because I'm using homemade stock in a moment, which won't have a lot of salt. Lots of black pepper. We'll mix this up. So I'm just going to toss all this so it's nicely mixed, especially those spices you want mixed in evenly. Now we'll add a little stock at a time. I'm just going to use a cup. I'll add about 1/2 cup at a time and just drizzle it over and then quickly stir it so it gets mixed throughout. And the key to stuffing is you don't want it wet. You just want it moist. We'll add some more stock and quickly stir. And again, not wet, just moist. And you'll know it's moist when it starts kind of holding together and the cubes aren't quite as formed. They start getting soft edges. We're almost there, I think. Now our puff pastry is mostly thawed, so now I'm going to take a rolling pin and just kind of smooth it and make it a little bit wider than it currently is. And if I have any separated sections, I'll just pinch them together and then I'll make sure these overlap. There we go. And so we're just making it a little wider. We won't need it much longer. We're trying to make it so it fills out this pan. Now I'll move it into my Silpat pan. I'm just going to flip it over. And the ends will overlap a little. That's okay because you're going to fold those in on top of our Wellington, or inside our Wellington, you'll see. And it might have stuck a little, but it comes off pretty easily. If you get stuck with any of this, put it in the refrigerator and it'll come right off as it firms up. Now it's time to stuff our Wellington. And you have to kind of eye this. You don't want to make your pile of stuff so big that your puff pastry won't cover it. So we'll try to eye it. And puff pastry is pretty forgiving, so you don't have to worry too much. Our first layer are our Portobello mushrooms. And if you don't like mushrooms, you could try another meaty substitute, like seitan works really well, or turkey slices. That would work, you know, obviously vegetarian turkey. Next, we'll put stuffing on. And I obviously only know how to make stuffing for a crowd. We won't be using much of this, or all of this, I mean. What you can do is bake off what we don't use in this recipe and serve it as a side dish, because you can never have too much stuffing in my mind. So we're just gonna pile this on next. And you're covering all your mushrooms and just filling in all the gaps. And again, I'm kind of eyeing this so I know I'll have room to fold over the pastry. Now we'll add the caramelized leeks. So So I'll just sprinkle these on top of everything. And these are probably my favorite part of this. I love anything caramelized. Caramelized onions, caramelized leeks. Love it all. Next is the kale. And we sauteed and drained this earlier. You don't want a lot of water. Now we'll put on sweet potato. It's raw, but very thinly sliced, and we'll just layer that on the top here. And we'll just finish this up, and now is the tricky part. First, we'll fold in the ends. And I kind of press down and try to get any air out when I do that. And then fold this end in, press down. And you can use your liner, either your parchment or your Silpat, to help you fold it up. It might be easier not to. And you're pulling it as you kind of push down. Hopefully that makes sense. Because you want an overlap on this top part. So I'm going to pull and get an overlap. And I'll put some kind of pretty design. I'm pushing it down. So I'm just going to score a design. I'm not going all the way through. I'm just putting a design on the top here. And you'll see when this puffs up, it'll give it a little design and some character. You also need to put a couple vents in. So just go all the way down into the layer. Make sure it breaks and makes a little vent hole. I got one there too. Perfect. Now this will go in the refrigerator for at least an hour. It needs to be very chilled before you bake it to make it puff up a lot. So I have my chilled Wellington, and I've preheated my oven for 425, and I'm going to put it in there for 15 minutes and then reduce the heat and cook it for 30 to 45 minutes longer. Now I'm going to turn the temperature down to 350, and it'll continue to cook for about 30 to 45 minutes. We'll watch it and look for the right brownness. The reason we cook it at the higher temperature at first is to help the pastry puff at the beginning, and now it'll just lightly brown as it goes along. Here we go. It looks and smells delicious. We're going to let it sit for about 5 minutes to cool off before we slice into it. Here's our finished product. You can see all the beautiful layers of the sweet potato and the kale and the stuffing and the mushrooms and nice flaky crust. And I like to serve this with a little bit of mushroom gravy. It's also really good with my creamed onions that I did last Thanksgiving. So you can look up that show as well. It's excellent with that. Cut off a little bit here. You can hear the flakiness of the pastry. I gotta get a little bit of the sweet potato in that bite too. Mix that all up. There we go. Got the ultimate bite. Mmm. It is so good. It is flaky pastry, a little sweetness from the caramelized leeks that are in there, lots of meatiness and heartiness from the mushrooms and the stuffing. It's just delicious. It really is a decadent, real special holiday meal. I'd like to thank all the YouTubers who participated. You can check out their channels. We have links below. And I hope everybody out there has a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family and friends, and I hope you have lots to be thankful for this year. See you next time.